the backlash to this is going to be interesting. Hello, friends! Today I am to discuss and review a book I'm sure all of you have already read, and most of you have probably read the third one, which I'm reading right now and really would like to go back to. But no, the point here is that I've just finished Insurgent by Veronica Roth, which is the second book in the Divergent series, following Beatrice Pryor in her journey through her dystopian city as she fights for her own personal freedom in more ways than one, and that's all I'll say without being a spoiler. Go look it up on Goodreads. My point today is an interesting one, because if any of you recall, I read Divergent this summer and wasn't really feeling it as much as some other people were. I know so many people who were blown away by Divergent and loved it, and yet I wound up giving it only 3.5 stars because it just wasn't as powerful as I was expecting. On the other hand, though, Insurgent was a different story. I enjoyed this far more than I enjoyed Divergent. I have seen a bunch of reviews and spoken with Rebecca and spoken with many other people who find that Insurgent is really sort of like the lackluster book out of the first two in the trilogy. And I disagree. I really disagree. I think the author has done a really good job in the way that she's laid out these three novels from what I can tell. I'm only in the middle of the third right now, but the sense that I'm getting is that the first one is personal character development, scene setting, groundwork, a base for the second one, which really gets into the political and militaristic aspects of a revolutionary dystopian story. Insurgent has more scheming, more action, more critical thinking by all of the characters than Divergent, I think, really did. I felt that it was very watered down in terms of political, military, plot, and Insurgent was a sort of a breath of fresh air in a way. This mostly stemmed from the dialogue, I think, and what really struck me in Insurgent was how far the dialogue has come since Divergent, or perhaps that I was just noticing it in a new way. I remember when I reviewed Divergent, I was talking about how the dialogue did sound like kids, but it was hard for me as someone who has finished being a teenager to really connect again with the way that those characters were speaking. And I think I really appreciated the dialogue in Insurgent a lot more because as you see the plot from a governmental standpoint and a revolutionary standpoint, you have to appreciate how the author goes about giving you, the reader, the information and how the characters learn that information. You have to really lay out through the whole story who says what to whom and how they respond and how that alters every conversation that comes on down the line. And I think the characters really grow up in Insurgent. Their dialogue and their conversations still remain within their own personalities, but blossom a lot more. You can tell they are better understanding their world. They are really feeling the weight of what is happening. Not that they weren't in the first. There was a lot of senseless killing that happened in the first, and that's not something that's easy to narrate or easy for characters to comprehend. But there is just a sense of groundedness to the dialogue in Insurgent, and thus the entire plot, which is very character-driven, that you don't get from the first book. In addition to the dialogue being more complex in terms of craft, you have these characters who have already seen some sort of serious conflict. I'm hesitant to say war, actually. I'm not quite sure why, but I'm hesitant to call it a war. But these characters have all seen such conflict, at least the ones who are closest to Triss, who are closest to Tobias, and who the story really, really focuses on. And this is intriguing to me because I feel like they probably all might have a touch of post-traumatic stress disorder that is going heavily undiagnosed because they simply don't have time to sit down and talk about their feelings and go through that mental rehabilitation. And this, for me, is the reason I happen to enjoy dystopian literature. It's because when hell happens to good people and seeing the process of how they cope with it and how they react to it and understanding the backstory to all of their actions. To me, Insurgent felt like it was the backstory to Divergent. Divergent set up Insurgent, but this really grounded the characters in why they do what they do. And once they had seen everything that had happened, everything else just blossomed from it. And I think a great example of this is the interaction between Tobias and Triss. That interaction, and for lack of a better word, relationship, is so fraught and so fragile that it almost seemed unrealistic. It felt very, very tenuous, because obviously it was. In Insurgent, there is a lot of conflict that happens between them, and it just kept dragging and dragging on. They kept dragging the conflict out, they kept dragging their interpersonal relationship out, and there were many moments when I felt it just should have ended. They should have stopped acknowledging one another or the like. And that never happened, because I think this was really the next sense of family that was supposed to happen. And maybe that fraught and very fragile relationship was what kept this story going for me. I kept thinking that I wanted to see the two of them make amends by the time that the book ended. And I was surprised by that, perhaps given all that they had been through together. So in the end, I think that Insurgent is an excellent follow-up to Divergent. I think it touches on a lot of complex points and is written with far more craft in mind than the first book was, and I am very excited to tear through the third and find out how this all ends. I hear rumors that it is told from 2 different perspectives, and it seems to be working so far, but I'm not sure how much longer that's going to last. I keep getting the feeling that one of the characters that I really, really like is going to die, and most of the time when I feel like that, I happen to be right, so I'm preparing myself for some sadness. So not much more than I gave to Divergent, but 4 out of 5 stars to Veronica Roth's Insurgent. Excellent follow-up. If you haven't read the Divergent series and you do enjoy dystopian YA literature, I don't see why you haven't picked it up. And if you have, tell me your thoughts about Insurgent. Tell me what you think of its following Divergent and where you feel that it fits between the two, if you've read all 3. Also, who's excited for the movie? When I saw Catching Fire, there was a preview for Divergent at the beginning, and I cannot wait. Shailene Woodley is gonna be awesome, and it's really gonna be excellent. Also, Kate Winslet. Who doesn't love her? Links to things are in the down bar. I'll see you around the campfire.